This video will examine the steps necessary to add alternative login methods to Alpha Anywhere using social network credentials. You should begin by reviewing the information in the release notes as shown here. The first step is to set up projects within the desired social network. Developer projects must be set up in each social network that we'll use for user authentication. The developer must have an account with that network to be able to set up a project. The project provides special project credentials used by Alpha Anywhere to connect to the social network. These normally include some special keys such as a client key, sometimes referred to as application or app key, and a secret key. Most providers also require setting one or more URLs to use as an allowed redirect URL after login. Each Alpha Anywhere application will normally have a different redirect URL. You may elect to use the same project for both developing and deployed application, or you may create separate projects for each published location. We'll begin by taking a look at the various projects that are available. Start with Google. We have a project here set up in Google for this particular video. We'll take a look here. Most of this information is not relevant. Basically what we're looking for are the credentials necessary to get into this project. As we can see here, we have a number of pieces of information. We're using OAuth 2. This is the client key, or sometimes referred to as the public key, and this is the client secret or secret key. These values should be recorded somewhere and will be used in Alpha Anywhere to set up the projects within Alpha Anywhere. These are the redirect URLs that are allowed within this project. These will be the only URLs that can be used by this project after a user logs in. Initially, you can probably leave them blank. Go to Facebook, it's a little bit different. Again, these particular providers, these screens may change over time as the providers change some of their process. However, in all cases, we will still need the two keys and we'll have to set the redirect URL. If we open up on Facebook, we can see we have an app ID here, which is the public key, and we have the secret, which is currently hidden in this case. We can click on the show to show the actual application secret. We can look at our settings. This shows a little bit more information. We go to the Advanced tab, and this particular Advanced tab has some information on here that's important for us. Because we're using an OAuth login, we have to enable the OAuth client login flow. So we click the yes here. We also recommend setting the app secret proof. This is optional, but we recommend it as another level of security. And you can add redirect URLs here, one or more. As you can see, we have a couple different ones listed here. In all cases, we redirect back to the same Alpha Anywhere system page, A5 external authentication. Go into Twitter. We have a couple other applications listed here in Twitter. What's different about Twitter in this particular case, again, we have the API key, but notice we're only listing one callback URL. Because of the method in which they use, only one callback URL can be specified for each project. Therefore, if you're running multiple published locations, each will have a different callback URL and each will have to have a separate project. If we look in here into settings, we can see here where they allow us to set this up. This is where we would add in a callback URL. In the case of Twitter, it requires that the URL be valid and one they can test. Therefore, it will normally not accept localhost or a server name that is only available on a local network. In that case, we use the IP address shown here, which is equivalent to using localhost. When you're setting up a Twitter account, you must put in a callback URL in here when you're first setting up the account, or will not accept it. You should also check to allow this application to be used to sign in with Twitter. Here we will show the keys that are available to us. As you can see here, this is the API key or public key. This should be recorded. And this is the secret key, which should also be reported. Most of the other information here is not relevant in our case. Go into LinkedIn. Again, we have a very similar configuration. In this particular case, we can fill in all the information on the front page. Here we have two sets of keys. The only keys we're using are the API and secret key. And we should set to return scope of email address and basic profile. And down here again is where we enter the redirect URLs. We do not use OAuth 1.0, so you can ignore this section of the particular setup. Once we've configured the projects within the developers, we're ready to move to the next step.